I know. It's really, week of this. There's a. Yeah, Heidi? Yes, Heidi.
I know,
Oh,
I
that's
didn't
right.
go to her party, I'm so bummed.
Yeah, Heidi.
Shelly out there telling me about it, it's like, oh my God, this is real dude, this is not your average.
Yeah, she went. Yeah, she went out with like events. Yeah, I saw the program. I was like.
Pretty
Yeah,
always.
pretty cool. I'm like, I'm feeling a little. Kind of like keep up with the Joneses. I'm like, oh, for my 40th coming up, I got like a few more years, but when I get there.
See, maybe.
I need to do a blowout. Something.
Just your.
Yeah, I know, right? I'll just be like, all right, let me call. You know what I'd love to have is Dust Straps, DJ Dust Straps. He does so good. Have him out. Maybe we'll just do.
Oh, there you
That'd
go.
be fun. But I just turned 36, so I have to wait a
It's hell.
What about you? How's your son been?
It's been busy.
Really busy.
Right, never does.
Never. You think, well, it's only, oh, you know, no, that's a different set of stuff.
My kids are, I still have them, they're 9 and 11, so.
Oh, you got a ways to go.
Just think that when that happens, when you download it on your computer,
You know, they're all internet and savvy enough.
all right.
Is that what happens? I wonder, because I've been missing stuff.
I know. You know, I had it on my phone. It's so happy. They, you know, what I'm here. Somebody brought their dog.
Yeah. Hey, Steve.
Like, can't be.
I need that. Steve, what did you do to you?
I had selective surgery.
Oh, okay.
They had,
So it's not really things contracture.
Oh, what?
it's a buildup of collagen, so that it's what happens when people kind of, you can't open your hand.
Oh, yeah.
Slowly but surely, it'll curl them down. So it's a pretty invasive surgery. I have zigzag from about here to there. And then a big thing here, so. I had Thursday.
Going here. To have everybody, it's 4:02. Can you call in? We're recording it.
There we go.
Do I call?
Yes. Yeah.
Sure. Larry.
Here,
Glenn. Here. And Dave.
here.
Yeah.
Sweet. Do I write anything down?
Yeah. It's on tape.
Okay, all right. First order of business is approval of the agenda.
I move that we approve the agenda as is.
Steve seconds. All in favor?
Aye.
No opposed. Second order of business is unfinished business with the Paonia Comprehensive Master Plan. That's in our packet. And.
Well, I think what the whole idea was here is to look at this again, because we've already seen it once. And decide if we want to ask for an RFP to have somebody take all the information we have and then write a master plan. I'm correct.
Oh, yeah, this will be interesting. I was at the dentist.
I was gonna say, you have your mouth isn't working.
She tried to use less because she knew I had a meeting
Oh.
and then it wore off, so she had to use more.
Oh.
Now really not.
Okay. You need a Kleenex to brew in too?
She can use my sleep, it's okay. That's what friends are for.
So I mean, one of the things that we had batted around on this was to put out an RFP and ask for a very limited master plan, because you put out an RFP and you can get it. And that's really not what we're looking at. And so to ask for specifically a very limited master plan of maybe, 30 to 40 pages max. And maybe have a secondary one that's like a brochure, so that you could, again, 2 pages, they should receive the town's entire master. And that's going to take more bandwidth than what the staff is available. We do have money in the budget for it. We set aside $70,000, I believe, to do this, to hire somebody to do this. And, personally, I think it's a great deal. I was talking to Jeremiah Garcia's wife, I forget her name, but she has a master's in public communication. And I was talking to her about it and everything we have, and she said, oh my gosh, I could do that so easily. So maybe if we put out a limited RFP to maybe the local area and see if we can get somebody local to do this for us. Otherwise, it's on us to do it.
Of course, I have a few comments.
Go,
So, I'm fresh off of a really bad experience with an outside planning firm. And that experience was Paonia in motion. We produced a 134-page document just about our recreation. It reads like people from Telluride are roaring for it, not Paonia. And it's we asked in one of the work sessions for an executive summary, they never produced it. It's a really great document because it can help us with getting grants and stuff, but it doesn't, in my mind, reflect values of Paonia as much as values of places outside. So I'm very jaundiced on trying to find. So I agree with the mayor, that we definitely need to get more local on kind of expertise to help us with this. I would really rather also us see that we budget for, and I know this is going to sound like too much, but a good plan has to have support.
Yeah.
And we have to have more. We had a really great strategy session and 50+ people showed up to that. We had great results to. And I think that each section that we do then have a public piece that comments on that, and then we incorporate that and then go to the next section, public, incorporate it, next section, public. So the RFP could be for someone that's like a technical writer with a planning experience or something like that. But there's more than one in this community.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I would agree completely. I mean, one of the things I talked to Jeremiah's wife about was that we are going to have public input. That one of the things that we didn't get to in the strategy session, and I realized that
be a tough one, which is why the red pen campaign is going to be important, because there's a lot of people, since the character of the town has changed dramatically, there's a lot of different voices. And how, I mean, you try your best to meet the needs of the community as a whole, understanding that, you can't please everybody all the time. It's just not possible. But I do hear what you're saying, and my tendency is to maybe not, put it out, see who you get, and then we can vet that and make a decision relative to what that's. I guess it's up to the town council to finally make that choice, but we can make a recommendation. Sure. So, that's my 2 cents for today.
I agree with you, Steve. I think that's a good plan. I also really like the idea of somebody local working with it and possibly input from maybe 2 people versus, to start out to get, so it has more of a local flavor, programs every time. And also, when I looked through that, I don't think at the time when that was done, global warming was an issue, but
It was, this was, the planet was in our thing was 3 years ago, I believe, when it was started. And so, yeah, but there's another issue.
yeah, but it kind of goes with the water. And then, I agree that what happened in the strategy meeting was really powerful. And I think a lot of good ideas came up, but I agree with the Mayor Mary, that visioning, because things are always a moving target. And so if we have something out here that we're looking at, we can, keep moving back and forth.
Well, I remember reading the packet, that, one of the keys to this is being able to revisit this on a regular basis so that it's a living document, which I think is a really important thing to remember. You can send out for an RFP, but the reality is like, what is it? A plan is useless, but planning is priceless.
Yeah.
So, you do the plan, but you give the opportunity for people to understand that here's our first go at it based on where we are right now, but this will be an attempt to continue down the road, be a living document that will, as the town moves forward and grows, and it'll be the guiding, it's the guiding document for everything that's going on, so it's kind of, in essence, it's the town's business plan, and that's really kind of the way to look at it. And business plans are something that anybody who's been in business knows what I think was going to happen. What happens. So I have to do to adjust, and we all do have to accommodate what the changes there are.
Is it everything?
I was reading Hotchkiss, their plan, and it, when it got written and where they're at, it's like, how do you measure, movement forward, like solving, what's the most important, when did that, because there's a lot of great ideas, and I look at the Hotchkiss plan and it's like, yeah, there's a lot of great ideas, but what's their priority? What's their timeline? Something, I think that gives it more credibility than just this kind of story that maybe we'll do this.
Okay.
Maybe the plan incorporates something that has like targets or goals.
Yeah.
It's just kind of like I see this, but because that article we got sent, I thought was really good because it opened my eyes to that and how the most time. And I thought that was really, really smart. Did you send that to us? Thank you. It was a good article. It really helps me as a board member kind of tie in, okay, once this planning commission's done the general plan, then it's our job as a board to figure out that capital plan that supports that. use that general plan to guide us along with. So one example is, and I will say this about Hamilton in Motion. That plan that we had, what we did in the Parks Committee is we decided to start meeting in parks. And so our third meeting since that plan came out is going to be in the River Park in September. But each time we pick a park, we meet there once a month. We look at what Pam Motion suggested for improvements in that park and then try to set priorities for people to set up and bring that back to the board and say, here's what the community's thinking. So we typically had anywhere from 5 to 10 citizens just show up to our meetings and back that process. But we haven't let it die. We've kept it, we keep that document as we move along. That's what you're saying about just continuing.
So I was just gonna say that I like that idea actually of doing some type of an attachment or thinking about how to plan things forward, because when you're talking about the document, it's at a maximum, every 5 years, you're supposed to be formally reviewing and doing any updates to your plan. So if you have an idea of what your expectations or goal, what you're working toward to meet in that 5 year, that is a really good gauge to see if the town is staying on task or if things are dramatically shifting and need to be updated when you're doing that 5 year review.
Yeah, I agree with the request. And I think if we got us locally, we could decide on the quiz. That sounds most like Paonia. I like that. We're not a ski town. We have our own thing. Yeah, and we do have, I think we do have some good talent here, so we should probably ask them first before we go outside of Paonia. I really like the red pen campaign, so pretty much it's like I'm in line with what everyone else is saying.
I particularly want to add to that because I had an experience when I lived in the Iowa area where there was this proposal for a rec district that they wanted to do. The town didn't want it and we voted it down, but in the process, we got this proposal from the powers that be, which was the sport community, and it was boilerplate, which is what you're talking about. And to avoid that as much as possible. So I want to concur that it's something that we work as hard as we can to have it reflect who we are, rather than what's easy for whoever does those kind of plans to come up, okay, well, I can just fill in the blanks and we'll have a plan. That's not what we're looking for, or as I can tell.
It's good direction when we draft the RFP. And they're not looking for a one thing master plan update. It's very specific to, listing out what the expectation is as far as community meetings and things. Not having them come in and say, okay, well, we do 7 community meetings and we do, this is it's exactly like this, and then, to be able to say this is what we want to have.
Right.
Well, I'll make a motion that we recommend to the board that we put out an RFP for a local person to write a master plan or coordinate. Right. Yeah, you can say.
A second,
At this level.
all in favor?
Yeah.
So maybe we could get into some specifics about. So does the council has to approve the RFP because it's over 5,000.
Right.
On the purchasing policy, so that's why. So. Too late to put it on this agenda for Thursday. But it could go on the agenda for. I think it is when I saw there.
Well, and the other thing is, maybe we can sit down and try and write some points that we would like to. You can have a
Draft
draft RFP at that.
this 27.
Who's responsible for the RFP in terms of the draft?
Yes.
Yeah, I'll be happy.
To assistance.
Yeah, I'll be happy to you and whoever else, yeah. Maybe you could, do a thing and send it off to us and we can reach you.
We can have our own
I'll send you
red pen. So.
Okay.
I'm curious about, there's this thing about transparency and public process. So ideally, it'd be nice if we could just get a draft that each of us could look at and send our comments back to Corinne and she can incorporate those. I want to make sure we're not running afoul of the open meetings law, having doing that. As long as we're not communicating with each other
Right,
about that, if we're just sending it back to her, she can incorporate it. So for each of us from within the next week, the end of this week, what you think should be in an RFP, just send her a quick email with a couple of bullet points.
Okay.
That would be a good starting place. It would help her move forward with building a draft.
Cool.
Okay, new business. Next on the agenda, review. Ordinance 2017-11, amendment to the location of section of zoning chapter 16 regulations.
So you want me to give you our.
Yeah, get us a quick.
Okay. So some, of course, our two trustees are aware, but for the full commission. In 2017, this section that we saw in the ordinance that was attached, 2017-11, were relocated from the zoning chapter 16 to building chapter 18. The impetus for this was to believe that the majority of the things that were moved required things like public notice, public hearings, that weren't necessary because they're being initiated by the town or the commission, and it is town-wide. It affects the entire town. It's not for specific locations. You can't do your 200-foot notification when it's all about. I am so sorry. If I had known this is what was going on.
Oh, you're fine.
Oh, I have some weird in my.
No.
Okay.
You're just talking on the side of your mouth. That's
So. Ultimately, the state really didn't belong in the zoning chapter. Since that time, spearheaded by Ms. Watson, primarily, has been a discussion that she really disagrees. And if you really look at the sections of code, they very much have a direct impact to zoning. More than they do building, and they belong in the zoning chapter of the municipal code. So the request is that the board rescind this ordinance and return these sections back to zoning instead of building. And at the last meeting, the board voted to have this reviewed by the planning commission, because the planning commission's primary duty is chapter 16 zoning. And so looking and seeing if you would agree that these sections in their entirety, or maybe some of them, not all of them, are more appropriate in building versus zoning.
Would you want to all the sections from zoning?
No, from building.
Go back to zoning.
Back up.
Yes, in 2017, we moved them from zoning to building. She wants us to go from building to zoning. She wants to return them to the zoning.
So it's page 56 of the packet if you're electronic.
You want to try it? There you go. And I was looking at this, and some of the things I think are more appropriate to building, and I think you're probably the expert, Steve, as to what is what on this. For example, floodplain. It seems to me that's more a building issue than it is a zoning issue. Yeah, what does zoning have to do with whether you locate your building in a floodplain and how you compensate for that when you're building? Signage, again, that seems to me not a zoning issue so much as a building issue. It does have some issues when it comes to zoning, in that, you don't want to put a big sign up got a low person running a small business in the neighborhood. You don't want the sign up, but some of the other stuff I'm not so, it can go back as far as I'm concerned, but those are the two I really looked at and thought, maybe they should stay in building.
I think what I heard from Suzanne Watson was really the thing about if a citizen's trying to build something, where do they find out the information? Because, you know, so typically someone who's trying to build an accessory structure or add on to their house or something, they would go into they wouldn't necessarily go into zoning because they know what their zoning is. They would go into building chapters and try to read. So anything about fire mitigation, things about building permit and site plan review, things like that should definitely be in building so they catch it right away. And they can see those sections that apply to them right away. And I think that's the main thing I'm hearing from her, is simplifying it.
But she wants all this stuff back in zoning.
Well, I don't know if it's all, but I know that there's some clear parts that should be in there for sure. Having just built myself. So like building regulations and town code, flood damage stuff, because, you know, some of us live by Minnesota Creek, we need to know that stuff. What was it? Accessory building structures and uses, building permit and site plan review. Those should definitely be for building.
Yeah, I agree.
My tendency, without having gone through all this, because I wasn't able to use it for this weekend, well, very good, but is that things fit in the building code.
Yeah.
Okay, you simplify it. If you're building, if it's a thing, then it's a building thing. If it's a kind of a, what would the other term be? But yeah, it would be an abstract. It would be something that is not necessarily a thing. Anything other than a thing might fit within zoning, right? Because it has to do with use, let's put it that way. Okay, that's my understanding of the differences between the code, the building code and the zoning. Is that zoning has to do with use. And building has to do with the things that you do within that use. Okay, so that's how I would interpret that in general. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and I think that's what Suzanne has said too, is that it's land use. And so things that have to do with land use need to be in zoning and not building.
So building on slopes greater than 25% would be an example of where would that go?
I mean,
To me, that's a thing.
Yeah,
It's an action,
Yeah,
yeah.
right? Rather than like an abstract.
I mean, besides Susan complaining, about anybody else complaining about where this is?
no,
No.
Okay. And do you have anything? I don't think there's anything wrong with staying in building. That's my opinion. Does somebody want to make a motion?
yeah, so take a look at it. Yeah, if there's anything to view from, should actually go back to something. Yeah,
As a contractor, that would be.
yeah, exactly, very valuable.
Here's a suggestion.
Yeah.
You want to back on Suzanne, since she's the squeaky wheel. Specifically, what section should be there?
I think she wants it all.
She wants it all.
Yeah.
Yeah, all
Then you would have to come back and say, well, this is the way we're looking at it. Things that. How'd you say it, Steve? Things versus.
Things, it's the doing. That's how I would interpret that personally from a contractor's perspective. It's what I do, not what I'm kind of
Tangible.
tangible. That's a good way.
Yeah.
Tangible rather than intangible. And that would be the best way, I think, to explain it that makes sense to people.
So tangible things should go back in.
They should stay in the building code.
And intangible should go back to zoning.
Right.
I don't know.
Well, I could see somewhere that flooded, right? Even though technically it's a thing, but it's determined by, it's by engineers who look at look at the lay of the land and all of that kind of stuff, and they tell you where the floodplain is, right? That's more intangible, you know, it's not,
Okay,
okay, as opposed to building a deck or, you know, an accessory, you know, unit on your property within the boundaries of your property. So
So
Flood
flood
damage,
question.
Article 9.
Oh,
okay.
is it possible? I don't know, could you make a motion for him to like look at it and make a recommendation? We can revisit this.
Yeah, I mean, you're not on a timeline.
Right, we are on the time.
We just, all we will do is then just report, I will report back at the meeting that, you know, the planning commission did an initial discussion and are reviewing it further until the next meeting.
And I think your frame is really good for me to go back through this and.
right, if we all take a look at it with
Yeah.
that kind of idea,
Yeah,
then some of this, which to some degree, you know, would be a means of one, getting it right.
yeah,
If we get it right, you know, some folks aren't always gonna like what we decide, and that's okay, but part of it will be within the scope of what they want, and some of it might not, and that's okay.
I'm laughing a little bit because we had vacancies on the planning commission. Suzanne didn't sign up.
I know.
So, you know, if it was that passionate, why don't you get on board and help us do it? So anyway,
Yeah.
one of the things that I thought was a good idea that she had in one of our meetings, she occasionally comes up with pretty good stuff. Was that the planning commission doesn't meet that much. And, you know, it's like right now, we've met for a half hour. We basically covered most of our business, but what's the problem with meeting once a month? Just setting a meeting, it's a regular meeting, because like we have something to do now to review this for our next meeting.
Right.
That'll be our order of business. And then the meeting after that, we'll be looking at the RFPs. So,
Right,
and then the
that would be
general-
really, I think that's a very good suggestion, I think, especially with what's going on, trying to get the RFPs settled and
Yeah.
trying to look through this again now with a fresh,
Well,
kind of perspective.
should somebody make a motion for her? Did you want to like review it and then give it to Corinne? Then I guess,
yeah.
for him to review it and then give it to Corinne and we can look at our next meeting and then. Two separate.
So that would be two, that would be two separate.
So, all in favor of,
We need a second.
oh, sorry.
Yeah.
Or, yes, I'm sorry, I'm proposing the motion for Steve to look over and then give it to Corinne.
All right, I will second.
I would suggest a revision of that for all of us too, because we've just had this discussion, so we all have the opportunity to look at it with a fresh set of eyes.
Okay, so that maybe the motion could be for the planning commission to review the review of ordinance 2017-11 and bring it back to
Brings back to the next meeting. Mary, you seconded and.
or someone else.
Oh, yeah, second the next, my revision. Vision. My question.
I'll second it.
Okay,
Okay.
Steve seconds. Okay, now all in favor.
Okay.
Passed and opposed.
And
And then,
so essentially, that's just gonna, our task is to review that and be prepared for the next meeting.
Yeah. Do you want to set the meeting? I don't want to set a permanent time for the meeting yet because I need to see if the board's going to change.
Oh,
the night meeting, because typically we did planning meetings on Thursdays. If the board switches theirs back to Tuesday, we could do Thursdays. If they keep it Thursday, we could do Tuesday. Wednesdays are fine as long as it's not the last Wednesday of the month because that's affecting water. But if we want to set your next meeting, which will give us a timeline for review and comment, so if you want to send your comments, I can summarize them and then put them in the packet. With the ordinance again for the next.
What about a Wednesday? And then we're, no matter
Yeah,
what the board.
then we don't have to switch around, we can get used to it.
So you could do the first, second, or third Wednesday of the month. Being that you're at the first Wednesday tomorrow, you may want to do the.
Wednesday in October.
Excuse me, the thing that's nice about the first Wednesday is it's past our deadline already, but if we need something urgently, but council on meeting the first Wednesday of the month, you could technically get on your agenda if we met like 4 o'clock in the
Yeah,
afternoon.
well, yeah,
You could still get on the agenda the next morning.
Yes,
The deadline's supposed to be noon on Wednesday, but if the board knows we're gonna be meeting at 4, we might have something, wrong, we can still get on.
right. And
Right,
if we
especially if
know-
it's a critical item.
Right.
If we plan the meeting, we'll already know and have a tentative spot on the agenda for follow-up.
Okay, we got a placement.
oh, yeah, good, okay.
Okay,
So
so
Wednesdays, if
first Wednesday, 4 p.m.
Is,
It's October 5th.
I have a surgery,
oh.
so I won't, but you guys can still meet without me, and you can still.
Well. Pick Tomlin's by the 29th.
I can do that.
Exactly.
September.
Yeah, that's,
What's the alternate? With Commissioner Hogan.
not the mayor. That's what the mayor doesn't do.
I would think it would be best if it was, that's only a commissioner.
Yeah.
Be the alternate chair.
Len or Steve,
I'll do it.
Okay, there you go.
it's Dave.
So
It
this-
is.
Alright.
Okay.
Oh, sorry about that. Yeah.
For now, everything's.
Oh, it's fine. Yeah, it's an elective surgery too. I'm gonna-
So we have to be out because I have a 5 o'clock meeting that day, so we are be.
Oh, very good.
crisp. So I will be
Very-
facilitating in a very crisp way.
Actually, I was trying to be cognizant of working schedules and
Right.
give people that are working as much time as they need before we have a planning. meeting. So that's what.
I'm okay with any time, pretty much. I can arrange my schedule out.
So if you want to do this earlier, we can do them at 3 o'clock instead of 4. I think we all be having it before.
I think it works. Yeah, it works either way.
So 3 o'clock on Wednesdays, first Wednesday, each month, 3.
And you guys are going, might all get out of here. No.
Yay, I like this, okay.
All right, anything else before I adjourn?
Oh,
All right. We're good.
yeah.
Meeting is
You have
adjourned.
a plan. Oh, my God.
Hey,
What? I
Hey,